The town of Cedar Hollow was the kind of place where everyone knew everyone, or at least they thought they did. White picket fences lined quiet streets, and mornings were filled with the distant hum of lawn mowers and the occasional bark of a dog. Life moved slowly here, predictable and comfortable, until the morning Ethan and Laura disappeared. Ethan had always been the kind of man who radiated confidence, broad-shouldered with dark hair that was always neatly combed and eyes that hinted at intelligence and mischief in equal measure. He seemed untouchable. Laura, his wife, was the picture of grace and composure, with warm hazel eyes and a smile that could disarm the most cautious neighbor. She was the kind of woman who made people believe in perfection, until the cracks showed. The night before, the couple had hosted a casual dinner at their home. Laughter had echoed through the house as neighbors gathered, glasses clinking softly, the scent of roasted chicken filling the air. Everything seemed normal, but those who had attended would later recall subtle oddities: Laura's frequent glances at the door, Ethan's insistence on checking his phone, and the way he casually gestured to the driveway as if he expected someone to appear. No one mentioned it at the time. They assumed it was just nerves or preoccupation, but now those small details seemed ominous. The morning they disappeared began like any other. The sun had barely risen, casting a soft golden glow over the quiet streets. Their dog, a golden retriever named Marley, was outside, whining and scratching at the gate. It was unusual. Marley always waited patiently for Ethan or Laura to open the door. Inside, the kitchen told a story of interrupted normalcy. Half-finished breakfast sat on the table, a mug of coffee cooling, and the mail that had been delivered the night before lay scattered on the counter. The house was eerily still, almost unnervingly so. Neighbors started to notice as the hours passed. "They never miss a morning walk," one remarked to the other, a hint of worry in her voice. When knocking on the door yielded no answer, the concern escalated. Ethan and Laura were the kind of people who were always visible, always reachable. Their sudden absence was a puzzle that made the tight-knit community uneasy. By midday, someone had called the Cedar Hollow Police Department. Officer Daniel Harlow arrived at the scene, his boots crunching against the gravel as he approached the house. He had known the couple personally. Everyone in town did. But as he stepped onto the porch, a chilling sense of wrongness crept over him. The front door was unlocked, the lights were on, but the house had the hollow quiet of a place abandoned in a hurry. The first discovery was a note, carefully placed on the kitchen counter. It was written in Laura's elegant handwriting. "We're sorry. We'll explain someday." No signature, no clue who it was addressed to, just those 6 words, simple yet deeply unsettling. Officer Harlow read it twice, trying to make sense of it. At first, he thought it might be a prank or a domestic dispute, but nothing else in the house suggested violence. There were no forced entry, no broken windows, nothing stolen. It was as though the couple had simply vanished into thin air. The officers began canvassing the neighborhood. Neighbors provided the same story with minor variations. The couple had seemed anxious in recent weeks, sometimes leaving the house at odd hours, returning hours later without explanation. Some mentioned seeing a dark sedan parked down the street for several nights, its presence unsettling but fleeting. No one had gotten a clear look at the occupants, and no one had reported it to the police. Until now. As the investigation unfolded, Cedar Hollow's peaceful veneer began to crack. Local store surveillance cameras offered the first tangible evidence: Ethan and Laura leaving their house late the previous night. Both appeared calm, carrying small backpacks, walking briskly toward the forest path that cut through the outskirts of town. That path led deep into the woods, winding for miles, and was rarely used except for hikers and local teenagers. But after they disappeared into the shadowed trees, the footage offered no further trace of them. The police were baffled. The couple had no known enemies, no reason to vanish without warning. Friends and family confirmed there were no sudden crises, no financial trouble, no arguments, no plans that would explain such a disappearance. Yet the note, the backpacks, and their departure into the woods suggested planning, not panic. By evening, a cordon was set up around the neighborhood. News crews arrived broadcasting the story. The vanishing couple of Cedar Hollow, where are they? Questions swirled through social media. Speculation ranged from the mundane, perhaps they had run away, to the horrifying, with whispers of kidnapping or foul play. The town was gripped with fear and curiosity, the kind that made people peer through blinds and discuss theories in hushed voices at grocery store checkouts. Officer Harlow returned to the house one more time before nightfall. He stood in the kitchen, staring at the note, and then at the untouched breakfast, and then out the window at the darkening trees beyond the driveway. Something about the way the house felt, too quiet, too still, made the hairs on the back of his neck stand on end. He couldn't shake the feeling that the couple hadn't just walked away, that someone or something was orchestrating their disappearance. By midnight, Cedar Hollow was sleepless. Streetlights cast eerie shadows on empty streets. The investigation was only beginning, but it already felt like the town itself had become a character in a story far darker than anyone had anticipated. Somewhere in the darkness, Ethan and Laura were moving, planning, hiding, or perhaps being watched. And the truth, whatever it was, remained tantalizingly out of reach. The first night of their disappearance ended without a single clue as to their whereabouts. Yet in the shadows of Cedar Hollow, whispers of secrets, paranoia, and betrayal began to stir. By morning, the town would awaken to the chilling realization that Ethan and Laura were gone and that nobody, family, friends, or police, had any idea why. The note remained on the counter, silent and accusing. "We're sorry, we'll explain someday." But who would explain? And when?
The morning after the disappearance, Cedar Hollow was buzzing with unease. Police tape cordoned off the neighborhood, and curious onlookers whispered theories behind gloved hands. Detectives had begun the painstaking work of unraveling the couple's lives, hoping to uncover a reason why Ethan and Laura would vanish so completely, or why someone might have taken them. Detective Mara Jensen, a seasoned investigator with a reputation for meticulous work, took the lead. She had been on countless missing person cases, but something about this one felt different. The couple's life was seemingly perfect, a facade, yes, but one carefully maintained, and yet perfection often hid something darker. Mara began by interviewing neighbors, friends, and coworkers. Most could only offer the usual niceties. Ethan and Laura were polite, friendly, and helpful, but a few observations stood out, like pieces of a puzzle that didn't yet form a coherent picture. A neighbor named Mrs. Patterson mentioned seeing Laura walking late at night, clutching her phone tightly, speaking in low tones that suggested urgency or fear. Another neighbor reported spotting a dark sedan parked across the street on multiple nights, its engine running but no one inside, or so they thought. These weren't coincidences, Mara noted quietly to her partner, Detective Sean Kim. Someone or both of them was aware they were being watched. Their first real lead came from Laura's workplace. She was a marketing executive at a tech firm, known for her creativity and diligence. Her assistant mentioned that Laura had been unusually preoccupied for weeks. Emails had been sent to an anonymous account, and she had canceled several client meetings without explanation. Even more intriguingly, Laura had recently taken a 2-week personal leave but hadn't specified why. Ethan, on the other hand, worked in financial consulting. His coworkers described him as charismatic but private. Recently, he had been increasingly secretive, making large cash withdrawals from the bank and taking weekend trips alone. Some speculated it was related to gambling debts. Others suggested he might have been dealing with personal issues he didn't want to share. The detectives pieced together a timeline. Surveillance footage showed the couple leaving their house late at night, each carrying a small backpack. They walked with purpose, heading toward a forest path that cut through the outskirts of town. This path was known for being deserted after dusk. No other footage captured them beyond a few hundred feet, and all attempts to trace cell phone signals had failed. Their phones had been turned off hours before they left home, suggesting premeditation. Mara and Sean began investigating possible motives. They questioned close friends and family, looking for conflicts or threats. Nothing surfaced. No fights, no financial disputes, no enemies. It was as if the couple had simply evaporated from existence. But then something peculiar came to light. In digging through Laura's family history, they discovered she had a twin sister, Emily, who had vanished mysteriously years earlier. Her disappearance had never been solved. Emily had been last seen at a secluded cabin in the woods, the same area the cameras now suggested Laura and Ethan had headed. Could history be repeating itself? The thought sent a shiver down Mara's spine. Next, they explored the possibility of foul play. They questioned local criminals and known troublemakers, but nothing fit. Some suggested that the couple might have staged their disappearance to escape personal or financial troubles, but the evidence didn't entirely support this theory. Their bank accounts were largely untouched, no ransom notes had been left, the backpacks they carried contained nothing but clothing and a few personal items. Detectives also began following up on the dark sedan sightings. Witnesses described seeing a man inside the car on multiple nights, sometimes watching the house, sometimes just parked silently. Nothing indicated a direct threat, but the pattern suggested someone had been monitoring the couple for weeks. The man was never seen again once the couple vanished. Mara began to wonder if the answer lay not with the couple themselves, but with the shadows around them. Perhaps they were running from something or someone far more dangerous than the casual observer could imagine. Then came the first tangible clue, a receipt found in a trash can near the house. It indicated a purchase at a gas station 40 miles away, just hours after the couple disappeared. The receipt was in Ethan's name, suggesting that the couple might have had plans beyond the forest path. Mara felt a tightening in her chest. If they had orchestrated this themselves, they had done it with meticulous planning. But the question remained, why? Adding to the mystery was Laura's personal journal, discovered hidden in a drawer. The entries were fragmented and cryptic. She wrote about feeling watched, of shadows outside her home, and of a growing fear that someone or some organization was after them. Ethan's entries were less detailed, but hinted at paranoia, sudden bursts of anger, and a need to protect Laura at all costs. One line caught Mara's attention. "If they find me, it's over. I can't let them take her." The detectives were now forced to consider that the couple might be running from more than just curiosity or trouble. They might be in real danger. Complicating matters, conflicting witness reports emerged. Some claimed to have seen the couple in distant cities, traveling under assumed names. Others swore they had spotted Ethan alone, looking frightened in the forest near their home. Every lead contradicted the others, making it almost impossible to separate fact from illusion. As the sun set on the second day of the investigation, Mara and Sean revisited the forest path. They found remnants of a small campsite, a fire pit that had been used recently, a few footprints leading deeper into the woods, and a torn piece of cloth snagged on a branch. No other clues were found, yet the evidence was enough to confirm one thing: the couple had moved deliberately, leaving the town behind. By nightfall, the mystery of Cedar Hollow had deepened. Questions multiplied faster than answers.
Why had they left their phones behind? Why the backpacks? And most importantly, where could they be hiding that no one, neighbor, police, or stranger, could track them? Mara and Sean knew one thing: the disappearance was no accident. Every clue, every anomaly, every fragment of information suggested careful planning, and yet there were layers they still hadn't uncovered. The town slept uneasily, its streets empty, but for the detectives, sleep was a luxury they could not afford. Somewhere in the darkness, Ethan and Laura were moving, hiding, or perhaps being watched. And somewhere in the shadows, the truth waited, dangerous, elusive, and closer than anyone could imagine. The audience, like Mara, was left hanging over the edge. The couple had disappeared, but their secrets were just beginning to surface, and every answer uncovered would only raise more questions. The forest outside Cedar Hollow had never felt more ominous. Towering pines stretched high into the evening sky, their branches whispering secrets in the wind. Detective Mara Jensen and her partner, Sean Kim, moved carefully along the narrow, overgrown path, flashlights cutting thin beams of light through the darkness. Every rustle, every snapping twig made them tense. Something about this place felt wrong. Weeks of investigation had led them here. Surveillance footage had captured Ethan and Laura entering these woods, disappearing into its shadows without a trace. Witness reports suggested the same. Now, after countless dead ends, Mara felt certain that the answers lay somewhere in these dense woods. And then they found it. A small, weathered cabin tucked between a cluster of ancient pines. Its wood was darkened by rain and age, windows dusty and opaque. At first glance, it seemed abandoned, but Mara's gut told her otherwise. Something about the way the cabin blended into the surroundings suggested someone had wanted it hidden. "Stay sharp," Mara whispered, her voice barely audible. Sean nodded, checking the rifle slung across his chest. They approached slowly, flashlights illuminating the rough planks. The door creaked ominously as Mara pushed it open, revealing a scene that would haunt them both. Inside, the cabin was small, almost claustrophobic. Dust covered the furniture, but signs of recent occupancy were undeniable. An empty coffee cup still sat on a table, a few blankets were folded neatly on a cot, and the faint scent of a campfire lingered in the air. On the walls, strange symbols were scrawled in pencil, triangles, circles, lines intersecting in patterns that made no immediate sense. It was as if someone had been obsessively mapping out something, or someone. But it wasn't just the symbols that unsettled Mara. On a small desk lay journals, Ethan's and Laura's. Mara picked up the first one, leafing through pages filled with anxious, sometimes frantic handwriting. "They're watching me. I can feel it. I don't know who they are, but they know. If they find her, I can't let them." The words were chilling. The fear was tangible, almost audible. Mara's eyes moved to Laura's journal. Her entries were different, calmer, methodical, almost calculating. "I know what Ethan doesn't see. He's panicked. He thinks we can hide forever, but hiding isn't enough. We have to disappear completely. I have a plan, and I won't fail." Mara exchanged a glance with Sean. The contrast was striking. Ethan's fear, Laura's control. The picture of a perfect couple in Cedar Hollow was shattering, replaced by something far more complex, far more dangerous. They began combing the cabin for additional evidence. Drawers revealed passports and identification cards, some real, some forged. There were cash bundles, maps marked with distant towns and routes, and even small electronic devices that could be used for tracking or communication. The couple had not disappeared impulsively. They had planned this meticulously. Yet despite these signs of preparation, the couple was nowhere to be found. It was as if they had simply vanished again, leaving only clues behind. Mara felt a chill run down her spine. Someone else might have been involved, or maybe they were being hunted in ways the investigators couldn't yet comprehend. Outside, the wind shifted, carrying with it the sound of movement. A rustle in the underbrush. Mara and Sean instinctively raised their weapons. A figure darted between the trees, vanishing before they could get a clear shot. "Someone's here," Sean whispered, eyes scanning the darkness. "Someone's been watching this place." Mara's mind raced. Could it be the shadowy man in the sedan, a local observer, or something far more sinister? Every clue pointed to preparation and planning, but the presence of a watcher suggested danger they hadn't anticipated. Over the next few hours, they scoured the cabin and surrounding woods, finding fragments of evidence: a torn piece of clothing snagged on a branch, footprints leading deeper into the forest, and remnants of a small, hastily extinguished fire. It was enough to confirm that the couple had been here, but they had moved on. Then came the breakthrough. A storage unit, rented under a false identity, revealed the couple's next step. Inside were more passports, cash, and carefully prepared supplies, everything needed to disappear entirely. But there was one item that froze Mara in place: a list of names, locations, and dates, with a column labeled Trust Level. Some names were crossed out, others circled. It was a map of relationships, people the couple trusted or feared, and at the very top, a name repeatedly emphasized: Ethan. The implications hit Mara hard. Ethan wasn't just frightened, he had betrayed someone, Laura perhaps, or someone else entirely. The carefully constructed illusion of their life in Cedar Hollow was unraveling. Back at the cabin, Mara pieced together the journals, passports, and maps. It became increasingly clear that this wasn't a simple disappearance. Ethan and Laura had planned to vanish, but fear, betrayal, and possibly external threats had made the situation volatile. The couple weren't just hiding, they were playing a dangerous game, one that could easily turn deadly. And then Mara noticed something she hadn't before. The symbols on the walls weren't random. They were a map, an encoded guide, possibly pointing to the couple's movements or intended destinations. It was intricate, precise, and deliberate. Whoever had marked these walls had an obsession with control and surveillance. The forest, the cabin, the journals, the false identities, it all painted a picture of two people who were prepared to go to any lengths to disappear. But Mara couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. If the couple had prepared so carefully, why leave these obvious traces behind? Was it a trap, a message, or a miscalculation born of fear? Night was falling as Mara and Sean left the cabin, careful not to disturb anything more than necessary. The woods were quiet, but the weight of the discoveries pressed heavily on them. Somewhere out there, Ethan and Laura were moving, hiding, or perhaps being hunted. And the truth, whatever it was more complex and dangerous than anyone in Cedar Hollow had imagined. As they drove back towards town, Mara's phone buzzed. A tip had come in from an anonymous source. The message was brief, cryptic. "They are closer than you think. Don't trust everything you see." Mara stared at the screen, heart pounding. Whoever had sent the message knew more than they did. The game had changed. The couple's disappearance was no longer just a mystery. It was a puzzle layered with deception, paranoia, and perhaps betrayal from within. The audience, like Mara and Sean, is left with a gnawing tension. The couple is out there, but where? Are they running from someone, or is someone orchestrating every move, pulling strings from the shadows? And most importantly, will they ever truly be found? The forest, once just a backdrop, had become a character itself, alive, watchful, and dangerous. The dark truth was only beginning to emerge, and every answer uncovered seemed to raise more questions. The town of Cedar Hollow had changed since Ethan and Laura vanished. Quiet streets, once filled with the ordinary rhythms of daily life, now carried a strange tension. Every passerby seemed to glance over their shoulder. Every knock at the door was met with suspicion. Yet the couple themselves remained missing, an enigma that grew more unsettling with each passing day. Detective Mara Jensen sat in her office, sifting through the evidence gathered from the cabin, the storage unit, and the anonymous tipster. The journals, passports, maps, and cryptic notes painted a picture of two people carefully orchestrating their disappearance. But Mara knew that planning alone could not explain the unease she felt. Something else, something unseen, was at play. Sean Kim entered holding a folder thick with files. "I traced some of the passports," he said. "Laura's name pops up in a city 2 states away under a different identity. Ethan, nothing. It's like he disappeared off the map completely." Mara frowned. "So Laura is out there hiding, but Ethan, he's gone, and I'm starting to wonder, did she leave him behind?" The thought gnawed at her. The journals hinted a tension between the two. Ethan had been terrified, paranoid, and increasingly desperate to protect Laura. But from what or whom? And why had Laura seemed so calm, so meticulous in contrast? Mara realized something chilling. She hadn't been merely planning to disappear. She had been planning to outsmart Ethan himself. The breakthrough came from a tip sent to the police under anonymity. It described a coastal town several hundred miles away, a quiet place where a woman matching Laura's description had been seen purchasing everyday supplies, moving discreetly among locals who didn't notice her. Mara and Sean immediately drove to the location, careful to avoid drawing attention. The town was sleepy, sun-bleached, and unremarkable, yet in the corner of a small grocery store, a woman with a wide-brimmed hat and sunglasses moved methodically through the aisles. Mara felt her pulse quicken. The posture, the deliberate movements, the way she avoided lingering in any one spot, it was Laura. Outside the store, Mara and Sean discussed their next move. "We can't just confront her," Mara said. "If she's gone this far to disappear, we risk losing her forever, or worse, triggering something dangerous." Sean nodded, tension etched on his face. "We need to understand what happened first, why Ethan is missing, why she vanished, and if there's someone else involved." Meanwhile, back in Cedar Hollow, the investigation into Ethan took an unexpected turn. Mara discovered inconsistencies in his last known movements. His journal entries suggested he had uncovered something, a truth about an organization, a secret threat that terrified him. Yet there was one entry that stood out. "If they find me first, I'm done. Laura has to get away. I can't let them touch her." The words implied that Ethan's fear wasn't irrational. Someone or some group was after them, and Ethan had been desperate to protect Laura, even as she seemed to be plotting her own escape. Mara realized the chilling possibility. Ethan had been betrayed, but not by an enemy, by someone close, someone he trusted implicitly. Further investigation revealed the horrifying reality. Ethan had been confronted by agents of the organization he feared, people tied to his past work in financial consulting, a high-security project involving sensitive client data. They wanted him, and they were willing to eliminate anyone in his path. Laura, however, had anticipated Ethan's betrayal. She knew that when the threat arrived, Ethan would panic, make rash decisions, and potentially place both their lives in jeopardy, so she acted preemptively. Using the journals, the maps, and the carefully prepared false identities, she orchestrated a disappearance that was not only clever, but fatal for Ethan's freedom. Ethan's last desperate attempt to escape the organization had gone awry. Evidence pointed to a confrontation deep in the forest, near the cabin where Mara and Sean had previously investigated. There were no signs of him afterwards, no bodies, no clues. It was as if he had vanished entirely, a casualty of the very plan he had tried to enforce to protect Laura. Laura, meanwhile, moved quietly to her new life. She had forged documents, secured housing in a distant coastal town, and integrated into the community seamlessly. She existed in plain sight, invisible in her careful planning, while Ethan's absence cast a shadow over the investigation. The layers of her strategy were brilliant and terrifying. Mara and Sean finally had the confrontation they had avoided for weeks. On a quiet evening, they approached Laura outside her small coastal apartment. She was calm, poised, and almost eerily composed as she turned to face them. "You found me," Laura said simply, as though stating the obvious. Mara's voice was steady but firm. "Laura, people are worried. Ethan's missing. Your families, your town. We need answers." Laura's expression softened, but her eyes were cold and calculating. "Ethan made choices that put both of us at risk. I did what I had to. I survived." Sean interjected, "But what happened to him? Where is he?" Laura's smile was faint, almost imperceptible. "Some secrets are too dangerous to reveal. He's gone, and the only way I could stay alive was to vanish completely. That's all I can tell you." Mara realized then that the investigation would never fully close. Laura's disappearance, Ethan's fate, and the shadowy forces pursuing them created a tangled web of fear, betrayal, and survival. It was not a story of innocence or justice. It was a story of human cunning, desperation, and the terrifying lengths one would go to survive. Back in Cedar Hollow, life slowly returned to a semblance of normalcy. Streets were quiet again, neighbors resumed their routines, yet everyone knew the truth, even if they couldn't say it out loud. The vanishing couple had left behind a mystery that would linger for years. Conversations at the grocery store or the corner cafe were punctuated with whispers about the couple, about shadows, about secrets better left undiscovered. And somewhere far away, Laura watched the waves crash against the coast, a postcard-sized smile playing on her lips. She had outsmarted fear, betrayal, and death, but she had paid the price of isolation. Her life was free, but it was also a prison of her own making. The final twist came when a mailbox in the small town received an envelope with no return address. Inside was a single card, written in Laura's unmistakable handwriting. "Some secrets are too dangerous to reveal. L." The town, the detectives, and the audience were left with a lingering shiver. The couple's story was over, but the questions remained. Was justice served? Was Ethan truly gone? And could anyone ever truly escape the consequences of fear and betrayal? Cedar Hollow would never forget the vanishing couple. The mystery had left its mark, a story of love, fear, deceit, and survival that defied explanation. And somewhere, in the distance, the waves kept crashing, carrying with them the quiet echo of secrets that would never be revealed.